Welcome to episode number 117 of the Marine Layer podcast. We'll have our two Mariners storylines highlighting Luis Castillo and a porous defensive effort so far. We'll take a look around baseball with our MLB Wraparound and close out the show with Speak Your Mind.
This show is brought to you by our friends over at Pagacci's Pub 85. With the season now getting going, and if you need a place to go watch some games, you can head over there. If you want to go have a great time with your friends, have some awesome food, great drink specials, and play some darts, some pool, and watch some games, you can head over there. If you head over during happy hour, you get some great specials. Those hours are from 2 to 6 p.m. on Monday through Friday. You can get $3 domestic beers, $4 Manny's and Blue Moons, $4 Mac and Jacks, $4 Wells, and $4 house wines. You need a place to go watch the game, and we know you do this season. Head over there to Pagacci's Pub 85 in Kirkland. And before we start our show, reminder for you guys, download our episodes if you're listening to the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. You're doing us a big favor if you do. If you're watching on YouTube, just take a second to like the video, comment, and subscribe. And then you can check us out on social media as well, where we're always active. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling. And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network, recording here on Thursday evening, April 4th, an off day, and probably for good reason, Lyle.
These are my least favorite days of the baseball season. When you come off a game where you lose and then you have to stir and sit around the next day with nothing to do, least favorite days of the entire baseball season. Now, if you win, it's not the end of the world. You can ride high on a win. But when you lose, especially when the Mariners lose the way that they lost on Wednesday, worst times of the year where you just have to sit around.
But they needed the off day. Like, they needed maybe you didn't need the off day, but they sure did.
Well, maybe. But can we really say a team needs an off day 7 games in? Yet again, I think people are jumping to conclusions way too fast.
Probably. It doesn't hurt.
I guess it doesn't hurt. Look, an extra allotted day for travel is always helpful when you have to make a somewhat lengthy road trip, which they did. They're going to Milwaukee. And by the time you're listening to this podcast, they'll be in Milwaukee getting set for a Brewers series this weekend. But still, I'm being selfish here. Maybe the players did need an off day. I have no idea. For me, no, I wanted to flush it and just get to the next game so I could forget about the loss on Wednesday.
Let's get to our two Mariners storylines, because we're going to highlight a lot of what happened in the 2 games since we last sat down and recorded an episode of this podcast. Up first, what's up with Luis Castillo?
Can it again just be a whole it's early thing? Look, he has not looked sharp in his 2 starts. To be fair, he looked pretty good in his first 3 innings against the Guardians this past week. It just got away from him in the 4th inning. He's getting hit too hard. That's what it is. He's not walking guys. He still has the strikeout stuff. He's just getting hit way too hard. His sinker has not fared well so far, and he's given up some home runs. Now, again, let me say this. I think Luis Castillo is going to be perfectly fine. I think Luis Castillo, when it's all said and done, is probably finishing top 10 in AL Cy Young voting. But through 2 starts, yes, he has given up a few hard hit balls, some that have led to home runs.
I don't think I'm too worried about this. I don't. There's not too much. None of the underlying numbers suggest that something is extremely wrong here. His fastball's down a whole mile an hour. There, you're going to find one thing. If the small sample velo is down, that could rise up when the weather warms up, and he has a few starts where he's 96, 98, and all of a sudden that 95.5 jumps all the way back up to 96.5 where he was last season. That won't be a problem. There's another slightly concerning thing where Fangraphs hasn't been a huge fan of his stuff so far. He's only registered overall a 90 stuff plus in all of his pitches combined so far. Not a fantastic number, though Castillo last year was at a 96 overall and still managed to finish pretty high in the Cy Young voting. So that overall, that's not it. I'm chalking Luis Castillo's struggle early to a sample of 2 things. Don't give up home runs, which for every single starter is the number one thing you're trying to prevent. Do not give up home runs. And Luis Castillo in 2 starts has given up 2 home runs. If he gives up a home run every single start of the season, he's probably not going to have a very good season, to be honest. He won't. The other one is going to relate to our second storyline, which is the defense behind him has been not good. It has not helped him out at all. It has not it has not bailed him out of situations. It has not given him confidence when the ball is in play that an out is going to be recorded behind him. And the sequencing just kind of off in his first 2 starts as well. So like a whole number of things that lead me to really just not be all that worried. Like, think about this on his expected stats. He's given up a 350 batting average so far, 249 expected batting. Right? That tells you a lot. He's given up a 600 slugging percentage so far, and yet his expected slugging against is 372. You know, that tells me some balls should probably be caught. I think that's what that's telling me right there.
And his xFIP and his xERA are way lower than what his FIP and ERA are right now. One, because this is what happens early on. Like, not enough of a sample size will lead to basic counting stats like ERA inflating. And it shows that, yes, there's been some bad luck, and we'll save all the talk about the defense for our second segment. But for everybody out there that's saying things like, well, Castillo's clearly the third best starter now, and they're saying it with a very negative connotation. They're not saying, oh, this trio of stud arms can be ranked in one way or another. They're saying it in a sense of like, oh, no, he's taken a massive step back. We should be concerned. No, you should not be concerned. Not only is Luis Castillo, like, not only does he not usually thrive in the month of April, like, April's not usually his month. The guy thrives, 1, in warmer weather, and 2, as the season goes on. So give him a little bit of time. 2 is it's been 2 starts, and he was cruising in the second start. He had 1 inning get away from him, and things started to kind of spiral. You know, I think the command can be a little bit better. His command was a little bit all over the place in that last start. He wasn't spotting up his pitches the way he usually does, especially as the start rolled on once you got to that 4th inning. But no, like, let's chill out, guys. What do you keep saying about the offense, TJ? You say, let's start worrying in June. Well, let's say with Luis Castillo, if he's 8 starts into the year and every single start has looked like how the first 2 have looked, then we can start to have a conversation. Through 2 outings, I'm not doing this.
And the second home run he gave up to Bo Naylor, which really kind of certainly didn't help his start against Cleveland. That was not a bad pitch. I mean, it was 96 in off the plate, and Bo Naylor put it in the seats. Are we faulting Castillo for that? He should have thrown a better pitch. It wasn't a strike.
Yeah.
But it's not like he left 94 middle. No, the pitch to Devers, you could probably have a better argument. It was still more of a borderline pitch, but that one was more in the strike zone, and that was up in the hitting zone. The one that Bo Naylor was certainly not. Like, I sequenced it out. Like, that Bo Naylor home run came after a Mitch Haniger error. The Mitch Haniger error did not directly relate to that home run happening, but it certainly didn't help the course of the inning. And then against Boston, Lyle, the other 2 runs that came across for Luis Castillo was a Josh Rojas throwing error and a poorly positioned Jorge Polanco on both other runs. And you're like, that's Castillo's fault. Is it Castillo's fault? Those are 2 balls hit on the infield that should be outs. And runs ended up scoring anyways.
All this to be said, if you want to nitpick on Luis Castillo through 2 outings, sure, he can give up a couple less home runs, and he can spot up his pitches a little bit better. His command has been a little bit suspect through 2 starts. Not like, oh, I have all of a sudden like started to develop serious concerns and personal worries about Luis Castillo's season. No, let me say it again. I'm not doing that. If you want to nitpick where he can get better through 2 starts, sure, but he's going to be totally fine. Again, the expected numbers say that. I think we know his track record says that. Let's just give him some time to figure it out.
You want the ultimate calming stat? If he didn't give up either of those 2 home runs, his ERA would be sub-3 right now.
So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Don't give up home runs, kids. They're bad.
And I'm sure you can use that number for a lot of pitchers and say, oh, well, if he didn't give up these home runs, his ERA would be X or his ERA would be Y. But point being, I think Luis Castillo, who is a multi-time all-star, signed to a big contract, is the ace of this rotation for a reason, is not just going to fall off the face of the earth. Like his profile and his track record are way too good to do that. And I think he's going to turn it around here very, very soon. So,
yeah, I think so too.
Well, should we get to our second storyline here? Because it does tie into Luis Castillo. Again, part of the reason some of Luis Castillo's numbers are being inflated are a credit to poor defense. If you really want to take something away from what's transpired over the last couple games, let's look at the defense, because this Mariners defense, especially on the infield, it's had its issues so far.
Just issues? No, like, man.
How would you like to put it?
It's not been good. But the thing is, like, if we sit here and say, should you be, like, angry at the Mariners defense? Like, you can be. But rest assured, unlike Luis Castillo, I'm not so sure this gets better. Is like, how do they plan on getting better on the infield defense? Like, this is what it is. We talked about in the offseason. The defense is going to step backwards. They're going to get worse at least 4 defensive spots. At least 4 defensive spots. And you know, the eye test has shown that through 7 games. They are worse. There have been plays at third base that should have been made that weren't. There have been plays at second base that should have been made and that weren't. And the range in the corners right now has not been great. It's not been good enough. For some pitchers that give up fly balls into the corners, you want those to be outs, but with less range in those corner outfield spots, instead of being an out, it turns into an extra base hit. And how damaging is that?
Is the storybook totally out on Dom Canzone as a defender? I don't think it is. I know like that play in the corner wasn't great on opening night, but I don't think he's some awful defender. I think he's going to be a league average defender.
It's not. No, the book is not out totally on Dom Canzone. He's got plenty of playing career ahead, but so far it's not been good. Right? And he could get better, but how much better can like one get defensively in the outfield in season like this? Like how big of a step? Like 1 out above average? Like that's not a huge jump if we're talking about like on a rate basis, how much better Dom gets.
No, but he's by OAA and DRS through 7 games been right at 0. So this is what I mean. By the numbers, he's a league average defender right now. The play in the corner on opening night wasn't great because it turned a double into a triple, but I don't think Dom Canzone is some bad defender. Again, I think he'll be perfectly fine out there. If you really want to highlight 2 positions, I talk about the infield, and it's second base and third base, and that's what I want to revert back to because you just alluded to it. J.P. Crawford and Ty France have been totally fine so far. Actually, Crawford through 7 games has been a little above league average as a defender. That's a nice sign to see. Jorge Polanco through 7 games is at -4 defensive runs saved. That is a higher total than he has accrued throughout a season in any full season he's played at second base. So he's got plenty of time to up those DRS numbers, but he's never finished a season with anything lower than -3 defensive runs saved at second base, and he's currently at -4 through 7 games. That's where the issues currently lie defensively.
And that's a premium defensive position right there, up the middle. And he had that ball on Wednesday go right off his glove. It like should be caught. Like should be. If you played high school baseball, your coach is going to say, "Why didn't you catch that ball?" Like
right.
That. Like that's where we're at, and it's that, and the range too hasn't been great. Like the range, and we saw the communication issue with JP. Man, and it doesn't help that he's gotten off to a slow start at the plate, and people start looking at all of these things. We think Polanco's going to hit, but I don't think Polanco's getting, like, again, that much better on defense throughout the season. Like, it would take roster shuffle to make this team significant, take an actual step forward on defense this year. So
here's what I propose to that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to contradict myself a little bit with what we just talked about with Castillo, with me saying it's early. Well, I do believe that with Castillo. I also believe that with the offense. I know this isn't one of our talking points on this show, but guys, this offense is going to figure it out. They are not going to hit like this all season. I can promise you that. For as many gripes as everybody had with the offense last year, they were still top 10 in the league in WRC+. And now this roster is better offensively. So give it time. They're going to hit. But you're right, TJ. What you're talking about defense not always stabilizing, that is true. This may be what they have. And what I propose with this is, here's where I'm going to contradict myself because I'm already thinking about alternative scenarios. If Ryan Bliss gets to the point this year where he's ready for a call-up, do they start to do some position shuffling? And why I ask that, Josh Rojas grades better as a second baseman than he does as a third baseman. Would they consider trying to put Polanco over at third, and when Bliss comes up, him and Rojas platoon at second base? That might do something. Polanco's not great defensively anywhere he plays, but if you can maximize Rojas's defensive ability and platoon him with Bliss, that might do something.
But wouldn't you want Bliss playing more? so you can get his glove on the infield more, right?
But he'd platoon at second base, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Rojas is much better at second base than third.
Is that a step forward?
Something.
It is something, you're right, but a step forward. Because at some point, they're going to hit. If, in a bad scenario, they don't hit, they're going to need all the pitching they can get. And you know what's the worst combination you could possibly have? The most frustrating version of a team where you don't hit, you can really pitch, but you can't play defense behind that pitcher, so that you need to prevent that one run. You need to prevent that one run from coming across the board that your offense can't scratch out, which is the scenario the Mariners ran into these first 7 games. But your defense boots that run away. That's essentially what the Mariners are right now. So I don't know if that's a move yet that would prevent that run, to be honest.
So my counter to that is, through 7 games, there is a very, very real possibility that Rojas turns this thing around, because he does have the most experience playing third base just by innings. He's at -2 defensive runs saved at third base right now. He grades better as a second baseman. He spent more time at third, grades better at second. So, again, it may be a step forward if they were to make that move. Polanco, you're probably going to have to just hope Perry Hill can work with him to be a league average defender wherever he plays.
Yeah.
But it may do something defensively if all of a sudden Rojas goes back to second and splits some time with Bliss. And if Bliss ends up being the better defender of all 3, then you can put Bliss in late game situations too to play defense. Now, he's not going to play third because he's a second baseman almost exclusively with a little bit of experience at short. But that may do something.
Yeah, it could. So we're missing one position here. Are we just going to have to accept that right field will not grade out average in the out defensively?
Maybe I still hold on to the idea way too much of how Mitch Haniger actually used to be a very, very good defender out there. It may just be gone now. And truthfully, he's not supposed to be playing right field every day. He's supposed to be getting more days off his feet. He'll see some time at DH sometimes. That hasn't happened so far. So far, they've relied on him heavily, and hopefully he stays healthy all year because they need his bat. But who's your best option out there? It's probably Rayleigh defensively, and we'll have to see how he grades out through a full season.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rayleigh, you'd hope just on his speed alone would be your second best defensive option in the outfield. Mm-hmm. Range-wise. Arm, right. Like Dom's got a good arm, but range-wise, it's Julio and Rayleigh. But Rayleigh's seen the field the fewest of all of them, which certainly doesn't help the defense. And you have Demo as well. He's a left fielder. So that would probably be a scenario, Rayleigh and right, Demo and left, if he's going to go out there and play.
So Demo can play right. As we know, he's played everywhere except for pitcher and catcher, but he doesn't really have the arm for right field. He has the range to play right field, doesn't have the arm.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we saw that. Speaking of defense, he had a throw to the plate on Wednesday, not like a little bit offline as well. But regardless, I'm not worried about Demo's defense in the outfield because I actually think he's a pretty good defender out there. So there are options to improve 3 of the 4 defensive positions, as we highlighted. Dom improvement in the outfield, 1, 2, and that like this is without like barring injuries. Cade Marlowe, if he comes up, decent defender as well, who can play in the outfield. We saw him play in center field last year, spelling Julio a little bit. And then the movement on the infield. Like that feels like, without an absolute, like a super drastic change, that feels like what is realistic with this team. Because otherwise, this is what it's going to be, and they're going to have to be able to outscore their defensive inefficiencies. Like they're flat out going to have to do that. Because otherwise, it's going to be really frustrating to watch.
Yeah. And look, Polanco last year played over 100 innings at third base. That's not a huge sample size, but he did. And he graded as a league average defender. Will that sustain if they move him back to third at some point? I hope so, because that really may be a step forward. Look, I know much less than the Mariners do about why they're deploying certain guys at where they're deploying them. I'm not 7 games in trying to reshuffle the entire defensive alignment. I'm just saying, what if down the road could they look at in terms of other options? And that may be another option. Polanco can play third. So if they feel like, well, maybe Josh Rojas is best suited at second rather than third, and maybe we can move Polanco to third and he'll be fine over there. They may look at that. They're not going to do it yet. Again, this is the overarching theme of what's going to be most of our first couple shows. Is it's very, very early in the season. They could go out and sweep the Brewers this weekend, and then people are going to forget about a lot of this stuff. And if the defense looks a little bit better, people will start to ease off. But these scenarios still have to be talked about because defense is the least likely of the three facets of the game to stabilize between hitting, pitching, and defense. So if you're going to highlight one aspect of the team this early in the year, you do look at the defense. They're not going to change it yet. They may have to at some point.
Who are the Mariners' good defenders?
Cal, absolutely.
Yep.
Behind the plate. Julio, absolutely.
Yep.
For the most part, it is those two. I mean, you're going to have to hope JP can bounce back at shortstop this year and play a little bit better defense, which maybe this is an interesting topic for some discourse too. What do we make of that, by the way? I've seen a lot of people on Mariners Twitter, and not like some of the at Mariners fan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. It's people that the two of us respect and trust that say the metrics don't tell the full story on JP Crawford. He is a good defender. What do we make of that? I think we can definitively say both on eye test and numbers, going to his right on those backhand balls is not his strong suit. But overall, do we not give him enough credit for his defense? I don't know. Because the numbers are the numbers, but but some people say defensive metrics are pretty flawed.
I don't think we're being unfair. I think we would have a better context if we more recently got to watch a truly elite defensive shortstop, like truly elite, which you could, like JP was, someone who was not JP Crawford, like somebody besides JP Crawford who was truly an elite defensive shortstop, which we haven't seen probably since Brendan Ryan, right? But you and I don't.
Well, no, we saw it for a couple of years with JP when he won a Gold Glove.
Not named JP Crawford because there's a bias there. There's the vision that a lot of people have now that he's still an elite defender, which you and I don't think that is, right?
Yeah, look, the last couple of years he has not been that, but he's off to a better start. And again, I'll just give some other people some credit here. There's other people in the Mariners, social media verse or people that do Mariners content that seem to like to give JP more credit for his defense and say, you know what? I don't think the metrics tell the full story on him here. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying we're right. I'm just proposing the other side of the argument in terms of who are the Mariners' good defenders, with me saying, should we give him more credit?
And what I'm saying is that we kind of, like, a lot of people probably have JP lens, just remembering how good he was as a Gold Glover as opposed to now, right? And it can affect your view. So, like, more recently seeing an elite defensive shortstop play every single day for your baseball team whose name is not JP Crawford. And like, that's Brendan Ryan. It's 10 years ago, which you might maybe better than me be able to recall exactly. Yeah, I remember, like, this is exactly fundamentally what he did 10 years ago, 11 years ago to be this elite at shortstop. So that would be a little bit more helpful to clarify, like, really what level of defense JP is playing at short. I still, like, makes the routine plays, but I still see too many gaffes. Like, elite shortstops do not make mistakes, period. Like, they don't. And it's not just arm. It's not throwing accurately. It's range as well. It's making all sorts of off-platform throws. And I'm watching JP, it's not all there, unfortunately.
So to answer your original question then of who are the good Mariners defenders or the really good ones, you have Cal and you have Julio. Is that it?
Yeah. Yep. Unless you want to give it to a pitcher, but pitcher pitches once every 5 days. So
right.
That's about it. And I think that paints a pretty stark picture of the Mariners and puts that much more pressure on them to have to make up for that in other areas. Like, you got to be able to catch the ball.
And that is different than last year. They rid themselves of strikeouts this offseason, but if you want to look at the defense, Gino was a great defender last year. He's not there. Kelnick's a great defender. He's not there. So you take away some defense. You do. You're hoping the offense compensates and overcompensates for what will be a lesser defensive team. But yeah, you can't play atrocious defense all year and win the amount of games you want to win. It just doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. But the Mariners have two choices right now. They can continue playing poorly, or they can find a way to mitigate their middling defense and not have it lose them games. That's the most important thing. I don't think the defense lost the Mariners games, period, in these first 7 games. Like, flat out, the defense was the reason they lost. I don't think that was the case. It was certainly a part of it, but it wasn't the reason. The point from here on out is for that not to be the point. Not to be, that's going to lose you games.
I will say, in the Mariners' first win of the year, that throw from Luis Arias at third base got him pretty close, but shout out Ty France. Again, grades usually, and including right now through 7 games, is a league average defender, but he made a hell of a pick out of the dirt to save a run and keep the lead for the Mariners. So, unless you're Evan White, which Evan White, when he was winning a Gold Glove in 2020 and in early 2021 before he got hurt, unless you're Evan White, it's hard to really stand out as a defensive first baseman. But Ty France, I think, plays perfectly capable defense at first base. He's pretty good at digging those balls out of the dirt. I'm not going to call him in the Cal or Julio range, but that's another guy that does what he's supposed to do over there.
Well, credit to Ty, but wouldn't the other side of that battery offset it? A poor throw dug out by a nice play. That would be like a net, even.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And Arias is going to have to clean up some of those throws like we talked about on the last show, because you can't have balls in the dirt in clutch situations like that, because that was a pretty routine play and the throw got put in the dirt.
Yeah. Cross your fingers every time a ball gets hit in play, because that's how it feels right now. But Mariners they really don't have any choice but to improve on that. Otherwise, there could be some real problems. Before we get to our MLB Wraparound, let's hear a word from Game Time. Have you tried getting tickets to your favorite team this season, and either the price was too high, the seats were bad, the interface you were using it wasn't convenient for you? I mean, that sure happened to me more times than I could count. That won't happen, though, with Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. For example, guys, let's take a look at the Mariners' next homestand. They'll be back at home next weekend against the Cubs. You go look on Friday, get in price $21. You're sitting in the upper deck. What if you want to treat yourself? You can go look down. They have a nice interactive map. You go look down the third base line. You can find tickets for as low as $35 down there. It's super convenient and easy. The interactive map makes it a very user-friendly experience to go find exactly where you want to sit. You have the ballpark layout too, so you can find the section your seat is in. And also, the flash deals and the cheapest tickets are highlighted on that map, so you know exactly where those are as well, and makes it for you. You're trying to ball on a budget, they have you covered with that to find you the best possible price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code JUSTBASEBALL, JUSTBASEBALL, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get to our MLB Wraparound. Up first on the Wraparound, I'm shocked it took us this long to talk about this subject, Lyle. My goodness, what the Oakland A's situation continues to get worse and worse. It was announced today that the A's will be spending the next 3 seasons playing in Sacramento. 3 seasons in a AAA ballpark.
Let's give our listeners a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. So this got announced. TJ said, hey, Sacramento's better than Oakland. And to be fair, I think he was talking about the city itself, if I have that right. He was saying Sacramento as a city is more desirable.
Well, for some people, yeah, ballpark, though. The ballpark's nicer.
The ballpark as a whole, like when you look at the features of it, sure, it's not O.co. There's no ballpark that's like O.co.
Right.
Here's the problem. It sits 14,000 people.
You know what I was getting at? No, I think I said Sacramento is a better option than Vegas is. That's what I meant. Because of the media market is bigger than Vegas is, significantly bigger, in fact. I think that's what I was referencing.
Which is crazy to think about. If you were to look the numbers up prior to looking it up, would you ever in a million years think Sacramento is a bigger media market than Las Vegas?
No, but like Vegas, obviously more famous. But you pull up the census map, Sacramento's pretty sizably ahead.
Yeah. Here's the problem with this, and about 1 million of them lie. Not only is this a 14,000 seat stadium, which is ridiculous for an MLB ballpark, or so they claim, by the way. Think about all the problems this causes. Think about all the A's staff that lives in the Bay Area near Oakland, to which the Oakland A's organization is now telling them, you want to keep working for us? Now you have to commute or move. So there's number one. All the broadcasts that are going to run out of that stadium, how in the world is that Sacramento stadium going to be able to withstand 2 TV broadcasts, 2 radio broadcasts, potentially Spanish radio broadcasts, and then also have the TV trucks to supplement all this? There's number 2. Number 3, these are not major league quality facilities at all. This is not what big league players deserve and sign up for. This is a minor league ballpark that, again, sits 14,000 people. And yet, this is their deal for the next 3 years.
What the hell? Like, the River Cats have to be pissed right now. You're essentially getting bumped by another AAA team. You have to share your stadium with another AAA team with more overhead and more political power than you have.
And if you're going to start moving after this year out of Oakland and you're going to infiltrate another AAA ballpark, many of you may know where I'm going with this. Why aren't you playing in Vegas? Just go to Vegas now and play in the AAA ballpark until your ballpark is built. Why are you going to Sacramento? Again, this is forcing Oakland A's employees to have to commute every day to Sacramento. The players that probably live in the Bay Area now have to commute to Sacramento or move. Either just have them move to Vegas or stay in Oakland. Like, this is ridiculous.
Do you know why? Because John Fisher only gets what, the political leaders in cities want to give him. And he got the best deal in Sacramento. That's why he's there. And if Vegas doesn't build him a stadium, he's not going to Vegas because he wants the best deal for himself that somebody else is going to pay for. That's what he wants.
That's what I was going to say. You asked me the question. I was going to say 2 words. John Fisher.
Yeah.
How has Major League Baseball not forced this guy out of his position yet?
Well, have you seen the commissioner recently? He doesn't seem to think this is a problem. He doesn't seem to think it's a problem that one of his 30 Major League Baseball franchises is purposely not going to try for 7 to 8 years because of their inept owner trying to force a move out because he's not getting a free taxpayer-funded stadium.
Unreal. You would think a commissioner would step in and do something about it. I guarantee you if this was Adam Silver in this position, he ain't letting this fly.
No, there would be a forced sale at this point. Like, this cannot happen. A AAA ball, there are only physical seats for 10,000 fans in this stadium. 10,000. The 14,000 is because of the berm seating in the outfield. A big league ballpark that needs to result to berm seating for regular season games. You know what rubbed me wrong the most about all this? They had a nice press conference today. They're trying to gas this up. You know, one of the highlighting factors John Fisher wanted to sell the city of Sacramento on, that other baseball players were on other teams, more specifically Aaron Judge, are going to be the ones hitting home runs in the stadium. Wouldn't you Sacramento fans want to come to this ballpark and watch Aaron Judge hit home runs? Wouldn't you want to see that? Wouldn't that be so cool?
Let me pull up the exact quote because you stole this little bullet point from me, but that's fine. We were going to bring it up no matter what. John Fisher calls Sutter Health Park, quote, the most intimate park in Major League Baseball. That's like when you...
Small. He means small. He means he doesn't have enough seats in his ballpark.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of looking through New York City apartments and Airbnbs when it says, intimate space in New York City with great location, when in reality it's like 150 square feet of apartment space, aka you're living in a closet. Yeah. So that's what this reminded me of. He used intimate as a word to try to gas up the new deal they got and say, oh, actually, it's going to be great. You're going to love it. No, you're not. So anyway, let me finish this quote. Yeah, calls Sutter Health Park the most intimate park in Major League Baseball. He says he can't wait to watch the MLB's top stars like Aaron Judge hit home runs here. He didn't say he can't wait to watch Brent Rooker hit home runs here. He didn't say, I can't wait to watch Estory Ruiz hit home runs here, who, by the way, they just optioned to AAA this week after putting up a 1,400 OPS through the first weekend. So another A's shining moment through the first 7 games of the year. But he is actively talking about, don't you want to see other teams come in and beat the shit out of the A's in this new ballpark? I do.
And
Unreal.
You know why they got optioned down? Because they were wearing wristbands in support of the fans in Oakland. That's why. This is the kind of organization that is being run right now. This makes Major League Baseball look so bad. So bad that they let this guy, this let's give people a reminder like who John Stanton is. Or John Stanton.
Fisher.
Instinct. We've already talked enough about John Stanton. John Fisher. His wealth, guys, remember, not really his. It's his parents. They founded a pretty famous company called Gap. You might have heard of it. They have a lot of clothes. I'm actually wearing Gap clothes right now. Like this right here. This is the Fisher family name. Well, John Fisher inherited most of that. Inherited it. He didn't earn it. He inherited a lot of this. So he's pretty used to getting what he wants. It doesn't matter what happens to other people. It matters how it benefits him. And, nothing could be shown more than what he's done with the A's. A proud franchise that draws a ton of fans, has an incredibly loyal fan base, and a ton of history that he just doesn't care about. Like, the whole point of owning a baseball team is providing entertainment to a community. That's the point. Baseball teams are entertainment platforms for communities. The Mariners entertain the city of Seattle for 6 months a year to give people great things to do during the summer. That's the whole point of it. But what John Fisher has turned this into is how can I rip off the people that buy my tickets as much as possible? How can I make their experience as bad as possible to benefit myself and myself only? And it doesn't matter about them. It never matters about them. And it's so sad. And it's so sad. And the people of Sacramento won't care about the A's. The people in Vegas won't care about the A's. Who the hell is going to care about the A's outside of Oakland?
I really don't know how they couldn't just get a deal done in Oakland. Just renovate that ballpark already. Just renovate the land space you already have. It's like that simple. There's no football team playing there anymore. That's your stadium, or at least was. Just renovate it. It is so outdated. There's things falling down in that stadium. It is not up to Major League standards at all. Just renovate that stadium. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to happen unless there's a forced sale.
Well, I'm sure if John Fisher was willing to pay out of his own pocket, they could have displaced for a couple of years, knocked the stadium down, built a new one. These things are pretty complicated, to be honest, a lot of negotiations, but he's been negotiating for 20 years. So he's had plenty of time to study all options, I'm sure, including that. But you know what the city probably told him? Yeah, if you pay for it yourself, why would he do that? Remember, the grand scheme of all this is making us normal people pay for rich people's problems. Like that's what it is, right? That's this whole stadium. Dude. You can go look at it up on YouTube. Like that's what this is, right? Trying to take people's money.
Yeah.
Stinks.
In conclusion, before we move on, I will say it's pretty tough to get a team as a team that's in our own division that for a lot of years gave the Mariners nightmares, because the A's once upon a time were good, even though it now feels like an eon ago, and were competitive. It's hard to get me to feel sympathy for a fan base in your own division because you're supposed to root for them to not win. But how could you not feel sympathy for A's fans, players, staff, and the entire city of Oakland at this point? Like, you have to.
How many people lose jobs because of this? All the ushers, parking attendants,
It's not good.
the sanitation workers, like on and on and on and on. All these people who rely on this as a huge part of their income, and they essentially got the middle finger.
Yeah.
Awful.
It's not good. Well, let's move on to a more positive story. Well, positive is a
figurative term.
A term you can interpret, because this is, again, an in-division team having success, but it is a pretty cool story. So we'll call it positive. Ronel Blanco threw a no-hitter in the first week of baseball. Astros pitcher, no-hit the Blue Jays. Pretty cool. I mean, and a guy that has really had to grind his way through the minor leagues got a pretty cool moment in the big leagues.
How about that no-hitter? I mean, it's such a cool story. He's 30 now, made his major league debut when he was 28. And even though he's out of the DR, he didn't sign till he was 22. Like, that's really old. By the way, like, I heard Jeff Passan talking on, I forget exactly where he was talking this week. He's talking a lot of spots this week. But he reiterated the point how the Astros have sort of found the niche of older international prospects. And Blanco is one of them. Like, Luis Garcia signed when he was 21. Christian Javier signed when he was 18, which is old. And then Framber Valdez signed when he was 21. Like, those are old international amateur prospects that you sign internationally. It's pretty unlikely. And Blanco was right along those lines. And yet he almost threw a perfect game in this. He walked the leadoff batter, George Springer. He retired 26 in a row. He then walked George Springer again and then got the final out. Like, he was a George Springer away from a perfect game, and really just highlights this is the cool part of baseball. He wasn't even supposed to start the season in the rotation, but they had injuries. So he won the last spot. And all of a sudden, here in, I think, his 8th career game, he makes history. And it's amazing.
Yeah. And the story gets even a little deeper than that. He didn't start pitching until he was 18 years old. He hadn't pitched. He was working at a car wash when he signed. When he was 22, he was working at a car wash in the Dominican Republic. And then he signed for $5,000, spent 7 years in the minors, got called up, got his shot, and then went back to the minors for a bit last year. Had a good spring in 2024. And like you said, there's injuries to the rotation. Verlander's not pitching right now. Javier is not pitching right now. Or no, sorry, not Javier. Luis Garcia is not pitching right now. McCullers isn't pitching right now. Urquidy's not pitching right now. And JP France is on the paternity list right now. So the Astros have a lot of guys that are currently not pitching. So Blanco got his chance and he made the most of it, which is pretty awesome. I don't know how long he's going to stick in the rotation. Again, at some point Garcia got Tommy John surgery in about May or June of last year. So we'll see when he gets back this year. We'll see when or if McCullers gets back on the field, but Verlander, Urquidy, France, they have guys waiting to come back. So we'll see what happens with Blanco. But the fact he got this moment, it's pretty cool.
There's an even deeper peel of this onion. So they signed him in 2017. You know who the scout was there scouting when they found him?
Who was that?
Julio.
Really?
Yeah. He saw him on accident. The scout was down there, and they just happened to see him while scouting this highly touted kid named Julio Rodriguez. Funny how it comes around full circle.
You know what else is funny about the Julio Rodriguez story? The fact that he almost signed with the Angels.
God damn, they would have Trout, Ohtani, and Julio and still be awful.
Oh, they would have won 78 games.
Well, I'm sure Julio is thanking everybody every single day that never happened. That's a pretty cool story out of Houston.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Our third wraparound subject, I just want to give a quick shout out to New York Mets, who have somehow, here in the year of our Lord 2024, managed to have 2 straight games rained out. Really impressive stuff, guys. It is 2024, and water causes us to go 48 hours without baseball. 22 games in a row.
Well, is there a solution to this? Unfortunately, there's not. There's nothing that can be done, is there?
I'm sorry, how much money did Steve Cohen pay for his roster last year? $430 million? Yeah, about that. How much does a roof cost, Lyle?
I'm no roof expert. I don't know, but...
Do you think he could build a roof over Citi Field for $430 million?
Yeah, probably.
You know, I think Mets fans, instead of watching last year's team crumble, I think they might have just rather built a roof over their stadium and had a nice, dry experience watching a baseball game.
So I will say this. We've talked about this whole roof argument on this podcast before, and anybody who listens knows TJ and I are pro roofs on every baseball stadium because, again, water is canceling professional sporting events in 2024. That being said, I think I've said this in the past. I don't really know how you'd put a roof on Fenway Park. I don't really know how you'd put a roof on Wrigley Field. But with that, if you're building new stadiums these days, you shouldn't be allowed to build one without a roof. Citi Field opened in 2009. Who in the world approved that project with no roof on it? New York is not LA. It rains there in the spring. Why is there no roof on that stadium?
That's a good question. So I've just had a sudden thought on this. If they were to build more stadiums like Wrigley Field, then I would be okay with no roofs, because Wrigley is special and unique. It would be less unique if you built more ballparks like that. But for this sake, if team and owners committed to building more stadiums like that, I would be a bigger fan of it. Now, if they start building more stadiums like the one in Texas, which looks like a dime a dozen, carbon copy, yeah, you better put a roof on that. If your ballpark looks like a Costco warehouse, it should have a roof on it.
Dude, Coors Field has no roof. It snows in Denver in April.
Yeah, Coors Field should have a roof.
Has no roof.
Yeah, those should have roofs. In Minnesota, it's like 15 degrees on opening day.
Like, build roofs on your stadiums. I will listen to the arguments saying you can't put them on places like Fenway, Wrigley. Yeah, sure. Not only would it be logistically impossible, but it just wouldn't look right on those stadiums. If you don't want to build a roof in LA because in LA you're rarely going to get rain, fine. Maybe every once in a blue moon there's a rain delay. Places like Minnesota, Colorado, New York, why are there no roofs on those stadiums?
Or stadiums that are in the middle of nowhere, like Kauffman. Why does that not have a roof? Not like you're lacking space. You've seen where Kauffman is. It's like
yet
in the middle of nowhere.
There's a bunch of grass hills behind the field or something.
Right. Right next to Arrowhead. It's just parking lot and field around it. Like, yeah, you can put a roof on that, bad. You can do it.
Yeah.
2024 and rain is affecting baseball games. Hockey doesn't allow weather delays in their sports. The NBA doesn't allow weather delays in their sports because they realize if there is rain on the rink or on the hardwood, you can't play. So they build everything indoors. It's amazing. Major League Baseball, yeah, well, if it rains, we can't play. Should we play outside? Yeah. Yeah, we should. Because it's America's pastime, Lyle. We have to do that. We have to. Okay, let's get to Speak Your Mind. Lyle, what is on your mind this week?
TJ says that with a little bit of an extra pep in his voice. He knows why. I know why. We're about to inform all of you why. There's a group of people out there not too happy at time of recording with the Marine Layer podcast. You know who that is? The National Baseball Hall of Fame. I cannot believe that somehow our little podcast has gotten intertwined with the most decorated museum in all of baseball, maybe the most decorated landmark in all of baseball. But we did. How did that happen, you might ask? Well, there was a tweet today surfacing on Blue Jays Twitter that said, actually, should I just pull up the original tweet and read it just to make sure I get the words right for it? I feel like I probably should. Yeah, this was unreal today. So there is a tweet that says, apparently there's an ex-Blue Jays reliever out there saying that he doesn't believe Babe Ruth ever existed because, and I quote, you only ever see the one video of him trotting around the bases, end quote. So who could that possibly be? Well, there was a lot of people in the comments saying Anthony Bass, which, oh boy.
Is this reliever involved with popcorn?
Well, while we let all of Twitter speculate about it, because I guess that tweet really got some traction, it's well over 100,000 views, we're sitting back saying, oh no, we know who said that. We know whose quote that is. Why? Because it was on here with the two of us, which we then posted onto social media and has over 300,000 views on Instagram. That would be our guy, friend of the pod, one Taylor Saucedo, who, as I'm sure most of you know, is very much of the belief Babe Ruth is not real. And I, you know what? I shouldn't just single out Sauce with this. A lot of the Mariners bullpen believes that, as we know. So that tweet starts surfacing. We start to see some actual accounts quote tweeting it. TJ and I are sitting back laughing, saying, I can't believe this is all surfacing again, because it certainly did its wave when we first posted it, but now it's continued to keep going.
4 months ago.
Yeah. 4 months. And where does this get better? How does this tie into Cooperstown? Well, to that original tweet that was put out, the National Baseball Hall of Fame Twitter account with 312,000 followers replies to the original tweet that says, our genuine reaction to that information, and it is a picture of a blank staring Babe Ruth, George Herman Ruth. So they reply to the tweet saying that, and then they quote tweet the tweet saying, to whoever this is that believes this, we've got a section of our museum for you to see, and it's all this memorabilia of Babe Ruth. So the National Baseball Hall of Fame clearly is not taking kindly to certain accusations out there about one of their most decorated players being called a mythical creature and a fictional character. Who would ever do something like that and promote such ridiculous claims? Well, that would be us here at the Marine Layer Podcast and the Seattle Mariners bullpen.
I think there's a conversation with Taylor Saucedo a week from when this releases with you and Sauce. Like, you have an official invitation now, buddy.
You're like, here's how I should sales pitch it for him. You know how we always talk about on social media that you have to hook people early into your social clips, otherwise people won't stay engaged. I'll keep Sauce engaged by saying, hey, the National Baseball Hall of Fame is interested in you. And it'll be like, what, are you serious? It's like, well, here's why. And then we show him exactly why. It's like, oh, they don't like my Babe Ruth takes?
You know the funniest thing about all of this? This topic, it entered both of our worlds today in different branches. So here at the radio station in Corvallis, our main host here, I'm driving to football practice today, calls me. And usually he'll call me a couple hours before the show. We'll talk about what's going on today and if I need to get anything done. But I wasn't going to be in to produce today because I was going to be at football practice. I'm like, huh, he knows that. So he's like, Teach, I was listening back to an episode of your Marine Layer podcast, and I stumbled upon your conversation with Justin Topa, also big Babe Ruth guy, Justin Topa, and Ted Williams especially. And what is it about this topic about Babe Ruth not being real? And I was like, oh, this can't be happening right now. This can't be happening. So I explain it. He's like, huh. Well, I believe that. Certainly, I would believe that. And you know what? It went on the show here on Thursday. Something I never thought our Oregon State-based talk show would talk about. Babe Ruth not existing. They talked on the show today. And I will be going on tomorrow to discuss it in an entire segment because I missed the show today. Because it just, so in the way it was used to reference today, the mythical being of one Travis Bazzana who might go first overall this upcoming July. And, 100 years from now, people might be calling Travis Bazzana fake because he only played during the time of HD and not of whatever technology exists in 100 years. So, that very well could exist and the conversation could change. But how funny is it that all of this in multiple different ways in our lives resurfaced today, all because of one person saying, hey, listen, all of his videos kind of look fake.
Well, I will say, so to just give some additional context, TJ got this call well before we saw this tweet. So it's totally unrelated. These two things have nothing to do with each other. It's just coincidental that they both occurred on the same day. But I will say, when you go on the show, I hope you're prepared because you've got reputations of guys in that bullpen to uphold. Like, you got to back Sauce and Topa and everybody else with these takes.
I will. No, I will. And they bring up some good points. Listen, they got a lot of time to sit out there and think. The first 4 innings, relievers aren't in the game. They sit out there and they think, and they go through every single detail of everything. You're come on. It's almost like a fictional character.
It was like how when there was that clip that went viral on Twitter a couple months ago. This was after we posted the Babe Ruth clip of Babe Ruth, like 100 years ago, giving baseball lessons to Little League kids. And there was a couple of highlights in there of him supposedly pitching. And it's like a compilation of all these Babe Ruth highlights. So we quote tweeted it and said, "Don't show this to the Mariners bullpen." Sauce, of course, finds the tweet, replies, and says, "Notice how when he's pitching, his back's turned to the camera with the thinking emoji," which goes back to the original take, doesn't it? All these guys say, look, George Herman Ruth may have been a real person, but all these stories that were told about him, nah. Like, it is, I will say, like, the guy hit 714 home runs in an era where guys usually didn't hit more than 10 or 12 in a season. I don't know.
No, people were saying they juiced the balls for him.
Can you even juice balls back then?
You know, the funniest thing, all of that, like our sports talk show here isn't very conspiratorial, but I mean, it was flat out said today. It's like, no, he didn't call his shot. He's full of shit.
Well, and that's what Isaiah Campbell said. That's how this all got started. When Isaiah Campbell was still on the Mariners, we asked him, well, we've told this before, but still, what moment in baseball history would you want to see if you could time travel? He's like, well, from all our conversations in the bullpen, I want to see if Babe Ruth's actually real or not. And I said, do you think that called shot was real? And he's like, well, there have been some pretty good arguments saying no. And here we are still talking about it. So now it's tied all the way in to the National Baseball Hall of Fame, all the way out in Cooperstown at the other side of the country.
It is just incredible, again, how 4 months later, this is still a thing. But hey, Babe Ruth is forever.
Like I said, shout out to the people in the pen that shouted out to us on opening night saying Babe Ruth isn't real. This thing, as I put it on Twitter today, this thing's like taken on a life of its own. I didn't ever expect it to do this. I figured a few people would get some laughs out of it, but now we almost created a monster here. I don't know.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's not like he's going to
to
get up and defend himself, Lyle. He's not here to defend himself, so we can take as many shots as we want.
Well, it's true. This is true. And if he was, he'd probably be off drinking 30 beers and eating 20 steaks after a game anyway. He probably wouldn't like have any leftover energy to defend this.
No, probably not. He'd probably be doing some other more malicious things too that will go unnamed.
So here we are. We have gotten tied in with the National Baseball Hall of Fame. What a world. I dreamed as a kid of going into the Hall of Fame as a professional baseball player. I would say I was about as far off on that dream as you could possibly imagine because, well, yeah, I didn't get past playing high school baseball. However, no, I'm not even going to say we've made it. I thought about for a second saying, well, now we're a part of the Baseball Hall of Fame. No, we're not. They're just infamously subtweeting us.
What if they cut out us tweeting the clip of Saucedo talking about it?
Oh,
then we would make it. Then we'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, if they do that, we can say we made it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So
I like that. That sounds good.
It does. We'll put it on our resumes too. It's like podcasting, social media in the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
No, just throw it in there. Last line. No big deal.
No big deal at all. All right. This has been a fun show. I think that just about wraps up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form podcast? You can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download, leave us that 5-star review, rate and review if you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that big red subscribe button. It helps us out a bunch. And then follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.